Okay, Senator Block, file item number 11, SB 578. File item number 11, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pleased to be here to present a bill, SB 578, that provides a tax credit to businesses that purchase and install electric vehicle charging stations. I'm happy to work with the committee on amendments. They discussed ideas, didn't propose particular amendments, but ideas discussed on page 3 under your analysis, sections 4, 5, and 6, we think are worth continuing conversation and would be happy to work with the committee on those. California set ambitious goals that include reducing greenhouse gas levels to 1990 or below, cutting petroleum use by 50% by 2030, and having 1.5 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2025. To meet these goals, the state is transforming our transportation sector from carbon-emitting fuel, fossil fuel-based fuels, to zero-emission fuels. Now, we're doing a great job in assisting the production of cars and getting more cars on the road. We spend $70 billion right now on gasoline and diesel annually, $40 billion of which leaves the state. So incentives like 578 would support California's green economy by supporting innovative companies that manufacture EV chargers and the jobs necessary to install the chargers, which obviously cannot be outsourced. By electrifying California's transportation sector, we also, of course, reduce our reliance on foreign oil and increase California's energy independence. SB 578 incentivizes businesses to install electric vehicle charging stations for their employees and for the public. Specifically, it provides businesses with a non-refundable tax credit of 30% of the cost of installing level 2 and direct current electric vehicle charging stations up to $30,000. While we have a lot of incentives in California for the purchase of electric vehicles, the state doesn't provide the same incentives to ensure that the infrastructure needed to charge those vehicles is available. Many states provide incentives for the installation of charging stations, including New York, Oregon, Georgia, Arizona, the list goes on, but California does not. The governor's 2015 draft action plan on zero-emission vehicles recommends providing financial incentives for employers, commercial property managers, and apartment managers to install workplace charging. SB 578 does just that. To date, there are 1,900 public electric vehicle charging stations installed in California, including over 200 fast charging stations. But the governor's 2015 draft plan estimates that 900,000 charge points may be needed by 2020 to meet increasing demand. With only 120,000 zero-emission vehicles on the road today, owners in California are already expressing concern about the lack of access to public charging stations, especially at their work site. A May 2013 study by the Center for Sustainable Energy California found that 77% of electric vehicle owners expressed dissatisfaction with public charging infrastructure. Only 37% had access to workplace charging. The ability to charge at work can potentially double the portion of an EV driver's commute that is fueled only by electricity and help reduce range anxiety among existing and potential EV owners. SB 578 encourages business to help expand California's changing infrastructure in order to encourage electric vehicle ownership to meet the state's goals to reduce greenhouse gas and cut petroleum use, to have 1.5 zero-emission vehicles on the road in 10 years. All of this is to say, my staff in Sacramento, in San Diego rather, one of the members has a Leaf, and he can come to work in his vehicle, but if he has to go to events, which of course is required by a lot of our staff, he worries that he may not make it there. He bought the vehicle wanting to help the environment, wanting to do his part for California, but it may have been a mistake. He needs to have access. In the governor's report, this is the governor's interagency working group on zero-emission vehicles, their April 2015, so just last month, report, noted that we have 1,900 vehicle and charging stations now installed, but said that, and this is a quote, the The number of electric vehicle charging stations needed to meet executive order goals suggest upward of 900,000 charging points maybe needed by 2020. That's just 5 years away. So we have to go from 1,900 to 900,000, according to, again, the governor's action plan. What they suggest in the governor's action plan, again, his committee of experts from around the state, they suggest that we consider incentives for residential building managers and property owners to install electric vehicle charging stations, including adapting incentives to include level 2 charging grid, integrated charging, as well as make-ready installations. Basically, they're suggesting what we're trying to do in this bill. The bill is supported by the California Chamber of Commerce. It's supported by the California Business Properties Association, the California Retailers Association, the California Building Industry Association, the California Apartment Association, California Grocers Association, and others. There is no known opposition.
Senator Block, let me just a couple quick questions. We have in our analysis different numbers than the governor's report you referred to. We have PlugShare, California, has indicated as 6,597 public level 2 electric charging stations and another 652 fast charging stations as of March 2015. That's almost, it's probably 3 times what the governor indicates in his report. So I just wonder what the discrepancy is. Anybody have any idea on that? I mean, I think it's more like the 6,000 personally, just from anecdotal data.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would always trust the legislative numbers more than the governor's numbers.
I would.
But even if we assume 6,000 instead of 2,000, we're talking a need for 900,000 in the next 5 years.
Isn't this really? I mean, of course, every association is going to say, it's okay, let's fund off the back of the general fund, because anytime you put a CREX credit in, you're funding an expense off the back of the general fund, because that tax money is not going in the fund to pay for foster care or development disabled or housing or any of the things the general fund says, because we have this public priority, we're going to spend those dollars on. It's the notion of what the Leno bill was about. Let's honestly look at tax credits. When you look at the market in EVs and what's going on, certainly it is all about range anxiety, and it's one of the challenges with respect to the electric world. But you saw the governor spend his $192 million on the PUC settlement for charging stations. You've seen now the public, the investor-owned utilities, they're fighting with the private sector people, and they want to put in the charging stations because they want to create the jobs. Labor wants to create those jobs, and so they're saying we put in the stations. So if they're putting in the stations, it's already financed on the back of ratepayers. That, quite frankly, is why would you give them a credit? And secondly, the cost per mile of electron miles versus fossil fuel miles is about 1/10 the cost. So the delta in price, you have the ability to finance. Just like if you want to install in your home, like one of my people, my assistant has an electric car, he has a charging station at his home with a separate bill. That's financed off of his bill. And they put it in, labor comes in, puts it in, whatever it costs, because the delta in the price is so big. I did a back of the envelope a few years ago, and I figured electrical cost is about 47 cents a mile. So if you charge 47 cents a gallon, excuse me. So if you went and said, okay, you know, from finance purposes, the reason you want tax credits in this stuff is where you have a really big problem and you need government to step in to do that. I only question this in the larger dynamic and ask you to think about this, where, you know, if you just simply gave permits to put in 1,000 fueling stations around the state, not gas stations. I talked to Senator Pavley about this, fueling stations. Fueling stations. Like this, boom, whatever your fuel is, it would be built like that and financed like that, and you'd have them. I only ask that because, look, the goal, I'm all for it, you know, and I think that the future is electric cars. I'm an Elon Musk believer in that stuff. The question is, you're asking government to say we're going to take these dollars over here because there's compelling need. I'm only questioning it because, you know, in my experience, I've seen the marketplace and how it works in this space, and I think it's exploding. The question is, really the question, I just close on this, and I'll ask for other support, is that delta big enough where you need this boost to actually put this stuff in, or will the market explode? Because you have these unbelievable people in the private sector, you have all this stuff happening in the space to make this happen. And I only share that because I spent the last 12 years working on this, and I actually owned an electric car company in another country. So I kind of live this a little bit.
You may need it for a short period of time, to really accelerate that investment. And then I think a combination of factors will occur. You can look at revolving loans, you can look at incentives with the utility companies who stand to profit as people switch from petroleum to.
Well, the ratepayers profit because, don't they? Because if the tax credit goes to investor-owned utility, their numbers, what they
But I
put in
do
for their
think
rates
we
is
need-
less.
I do think this bill's a good idea to jumpstart.
Maybe so. I just want to have, this is a committee,
There
we want
may
to
be
discuss
a
it.
jumpstart.
Others in
Well, there-
support.
No pun intended, Senator Moore.
Others in support.
But I thought you'd
Shock
get
me
a
in the-
charge out of that, right? Sorry.
Brandon McKaylee on behalf of ChargePoint. I just want to reiterate what the senator said. The federal tax credit was not renewed, and the tax credit is an important incentive for adoption of electric vehicle charging stations. Other states that have currently done a tax credit include Arizona, the District of Columbia, Georgia, Louisiana, Maryland, Missouri, New York, Oklahoma, and Oregon.
And what was the impact of those tax credits? They did them now. What did we see? I mean, the idea of this legislation is that you're going to incentivize the installation of charging stations. And with respect to each of those jurisdictions, what impacts it had? Does anybody have those numbers? Has it worked? Everybody wants free money, but has it worked? Does anybody know? Right, we got to ask the tough questions. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Julie Melanowski, on behalf of the California Electric Transportation Coalition. We don't have a support position on record, but we're going to our board tomorrow with a support recommendation. I'm confident they will say this is definitely moving in the right direction. I think the state of California is definitely trying to get EV infrastructure to follow the trajectory of car sales. I think everyone can agree right now it's lagging still a bit behind. Something like this could be what is needed. It may not be the panacea, but I think we should be trying to throw a little more at getting more, especially the level 2 charging stations out there as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Matthew Hargett with the California Business Properties Association. And just real quick, we represent the property owners who are being expected sometimes at their own expense to put these things in. We don't think this bill is the panacea. It's not going to put all the charging stations out there, but it is going to move some of our owners who right now see a 15-year return on investment, or in many cases, no return on investment to the property owner who's putting this in, as buying that down a little bit. And hopefully we can get some of these out there in some of the shopping centers and on office spaces where they could be charged. But again, for my members, this is a fairly small credit that we think might push some property owners, but it's nowhere near what we need to get to the governor's number.
If your property owner is a corporate entity, probably an LLC or an LLP, but let's assume they're going to pay 8.84% tax rate, you're going to give them, and so they're going to get a third of that basically back on this. You're talking about 2.5%. 2-point-something percent, Mr. Numbers Man, of what you're doing on your state tax. What does that really mean in terms of a charging station? What does it cost? You're going to save $50, you know, and does that really incentivize the folks? It always sounds good, and I'm all for this stuff, but I just think this is the legislature. We have to put ourselves to the toughest tests and ask the toughest questions. It's easy because all we're doing on these bills is giving away taxpayer money, and which means that everybody else who wants doctors to be paid for and all the other stuff we care about, we're squeezing them out. And we have to ask those tough questions. And you need to have the discipline of your thinking, I think, to do with this stuff beyond just saying, sounds good, let's give away the money.
We appreciate that thinking. Thank you.
Drill in. And that has nothing to do with oil.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Good morning, Danielle Lynch on behalf of CalSTART. We represent over 100 companies in the clean transportation industry, and we believe this is a good step in the direction of California meeting its electric vehicle goals.
Thank you.
1 million.
Lauren Hajic on behalf of the California Grocers Associations, and for the reasons stated, also in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith Dunn on behalf of the California Apartment Association. I would echo Senator Pavley's comments. Sometimes you need a little nudge. It's still new technology. I think apartment owners that see this little small opportunity, as you stated, it might be enough just to get them to dip their toe in the water and look at changing and providing the service. So not a huge thing, but a small thing, and sometimes that's enough.
Good morning, Davina Flemings on behalf of Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and we are in support. Thank you.
Amy Mago on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce in support.
Thank you, Amy. Any further in support? Any opposition? Questions from the members? Senator Pavley.
Glad to move the bill.
Bill's been moved. Any other questions? Senator Morlock.
Mr. Chair, I'm just curious. We're trying to incentivize electric cars, but we're busy paying for our transportation costs through gas tax. So Senator Bell is here, and he's been doing just an incredible amount of research on this, and we'll be addressing his.
He's charging $100 for electric cars on his deal, so he's catching the electric guys.
Is that enough?
I don't know, but he's trying.
I'm just wondering, Senator, but can I ask, Mr. Chair, Senator, Bell, a quick question?
Of course.
Have we thought about a utility tax? If we're going to start using so much electricity, why don't we have some kind of utility tax on electricity that pays for transportation, because that's where you're migrating.
Wait a second. Did Senator Morlock just propose a tax? How many people are watching this, ladies and gentlemen? I hope this is televised. I so move.
I believe I asked the question of Senator Bell.
Well, as a former city councilman in San Jose and a county supervisor, I would say that utility tax is the purview of local government.
Well, that didn't help. So, Mr. Chair, I'm sure you want a tax credit. You made the point a few times. I get that. I can see why everybody would support that. But I find it odd that I've only had one exchange so far in my 7 weeks with the governor, and his question to me was, how do we find funding for highways? And if you're incentivizing electric cars, you're transferring it away from gasoline taxes. And I'm trying to figure out the dysfunction here. Why are we so focused on this industry as opposed to where our revenues are coming from, just from a
It's a fair question, and we'll talk about that when Senator Bell's bill comes up, because he tries to address that. He talks about that and says we should charge electric vehicles for the use of the highway. He addresses it. Is the number correct? That's a separate discussion. But it is a fair question. We talked about it. And yeah, I know Senator Pavley doesn't like that, but because she wants to incentivize more people, she wants these PEV lanes, which are the Pavley electric vehicle lanes. You know, and we get it, but that's great. Let's get in the game, right? That's what we do. That's our job. Marketplace of ideas.
Just curious.
Yeah, no, fair call. Anything further? You want to close, Senator Block?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a fascinating committee.
The Republicans are proposing taxes, and the Democrats are opposing tax credits. How do you like them apples?
And you know, understanding Senator Morlock's concern that we are losing funding for transportation, we need to look at how we better fund our freeways, our transportation corridors. But I would suggest the way to do it is not by stilting the growth of electric vehicles. What we want to do, I think, is promote clean energy, promote our independence from foreign oil. You know, if you support, you know, offshore oil drilling and fracking, then you probably don't like this bill. But if you think there are better answers and electric vehicles are one of those answers, then we need to provide consumers with the infrastructure that encourages them to make the purchase, which is a large purchase for most of our constituents in an electric vehicle. And regardless to some extent of what may be in the future reality 5 or 10 years down the road, the fact that 77% of EV owners express dissatisfaction with the public charging infrastructure sends a bad signal to their neighbors, their friends, their family who are considering electric vehicle purchase. We as a government, I think one thing we do importantly with our money is send signals to constituents that, yes, this is a good place to invest your money. If we believe this is a good place, if we believe this is good, then a tax incentive is one way to make sure that our society in the whole moves in that direction. You know, we've given tax credits to the movie industry. They do wonderful things for California. We gave tax credits last year to the aerospace industry, do wonderful things for the country. But I'd submit that those aren't any more important than clean air, clean economy here in California, more jobs in California, which is what this tax credit does. So understanding Senator Pavley's comments about how this may just be needed a short-term fix, we are going to look at with the committee staff a sunset to this bill. But we do think this bill is right for this time and would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. You know, the larger dynamic here, you know, General Motors went and produced 40,000 of those, what do they call them, volts, and they produced them for the California market. When you look at the electric vehicle market, what Prius has sold and what all these companies are selling, they're all testing in California's market. They see it as a big market. If we really wanted to, from a public policy, because I'm going to just blow it up a little bit more for the heck of it, say this was a priority. Why don't we waive all local stuff and just put in 900,000 of these things? If you waived all the environmental reviews and waived all that stuff and just planned out 900,000 or 500,000 of these electric vehicles, charging stations, there would be no range anxiety. Everybody could be just like they pulled every corner gas station and get charged. And in these fast charging deals, which you get done as little as there's a place in Pasadena that does it in 7 minutes, charges your car. I went to China with those guys. We could really make this stuff big, and we wouldn't be impinging upon the revenue that we're dealing with. Look, I'm going to support it. I only want to tell you that I think that this is a gigantically important debate. I think that it's a part of a much bigger discussion, and I wanted to just kind of signpost these issues as we move forward and think about this stuff, because these are really big policies. We've got the pro tems 50-50-50 bill. We've got the whole infrastructure in electricity changing. Edison only 20% of their own power they produce. You've got a whole fundamental change. And this is one piece of this really big chessboard that we need to really think about. So, Senator Pavley?
I just wanted to throw in a 2 cents on this on an even broader picture. I thought Senator Block's close was great, but we tend to talk right back. Sorry about that. This is an interesting committee, Senator Hertzberg.
Come on,
No more coffee in the morning, though.
We don't believe in rules around here.
Anyway, part of the challenge that all the automobile manufacturers have, of course, my interest is cleaning up the criteria air pollutants with the pollution and health impacts, particularly Central Valley and the Los Angeles area, because we're in non-attainment areas under the Federal Clean Air Act, and we stand to lose our gas tax if we don't do something about cleaning up the air. So we have that to think about, health and lots of gas tax. Greenhouse gas emissions, obviously our primary sources, mobile sources of greenhouse gas emissions, so cars are on the table. But we now, after the California Clean Car Law, we now have a national policy that blends in corporate average fuel efficiency, CAFE standards.
Pavley law?
And it was.
Pavley law?
It was. But
Wondering.
by 2025 or 2026, the average miles per gallon that consumers will have is up to 54 miles per gallon. It is increasing. And how do you do that? This is why the automobile manufacturers, foreign and domestic, are all investing in alternative fuels and electric cars. And we need to encourage that, because as they sell, this is a fleet average for them, as Ford sells their big pickup trucks, they're balancing that with their more fuel-efficient cars, their plug-in hybrids, their electric vehicles. GM, which has the plug-in Volt that's been very popular, now has the Bolt coming out in a year that they said it's going to run circles and give Tesla a fight in the less expensive all-electric car market.
Really?
So this is now a national policy that has the attention of the whole automobile sector. So let's champion that investment, because what do? Not only clean up the air, you reduce dependence on foreign oil and Middle East problems, and makes us more economically strong. So there's a lot of benefits. The challenge is as we switch away from petroleum use and diversify our fuel supply and what we use to move around, the road maintenance thing comes into question. But I think this is a good policy, and if you base it on the merits, our challenge here as legislators to make sure that some of the benefits of whether it's manufacturing and other benefits besides the air and everything else, and wouldn't you rather spend an equivalent of $1.50 a gallon for your electric car being recharged than being ripped off at $4 a gallon by an oligarchy of refineries in the state? Makes sense. So there are broad benefits to the public.
Is that a motion?
It is.
It is.
And it's the second time I've moved it, but thank you.
That's good. Secretary, call the roll.
Mr. Chair,
Do pass to amend. I'm sorry.
does this go to appropriate?
Approach, yes, it does. Do pass to approach. Thank you. Okay? Motion do pass to approach by Senator Pavley, SB 578, file number 11. Secretary, call the roll.
Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Wynn. Bell. Bell, aye. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Laura. Morlock. Morlock, no. Pavley. Pavley, aye. 4-1.
4-1, we'll hold that open. Thank you for that interesting discussion and for drawing out Senator Morlock on that very controversial issue of the tax he's now just introduced. Thank you, sir. Senator Jackson, finally, I hope you were entertained.
Thank you very much.
File item number 13, correct, Senator Jackson, SB 670. File item number 13.
Fascinating discussion. It was a fascinating discussion. I bring before you on a slightly different subject matter, but one perhaps equally, if not more, important to the future of our great state. This is SB 670. First, let me start by accepting the committee's recommended technical amendments in the analysis, and I want to thank the committee staff for their help and assistance with this measure. This bill would reestablish the employer child care tax credit and provide a modest increase to the credit percentages for the child and dependent care credit for a period of 5 years, beginning January 1, 2016 until January 1, 2021. This bill is a necessary but a modest common sense measure that will help offset the costs of child care for many low and middle income families, provide increased access to child care for working families, and revive a policy that is supportive of California's businesses to recruit, retain, and support working families. As many of you know, access to affordable and quality child care has long been a challenge for working families, especially working mothers. It is the mothers who often face the undesirable decision of having to choose between bringing home a second income and pursuing their career, or remaining at home to care and provide a healthy and safe environment for their children. Currently, the state has a licensed capacity to serve only 16% of all children under the age of 12, only 16%. And only 20% of people on CalWORKs with families are able to find child care. Combine that limited quantity of available licensed child care with the growing demand for child care, and we see the impact it's having on access and affordability. According to Child Care Aware, California is the 13th least affordable state in the nation for infant and toddler child care, and the 17th least affordable for preschool. Currently, average child care costs for infant care, which is 0 to 18 months in California, is $12,068 per year on the low side. By comparison, the system-wide student fees and tuition at the University of California is $12,800 per year. Child care is a very expensive proposition. By reestablishing the employer child care tax credit and expanding the benefits of the child and development care credit, we can help to uphold the state's commitment to provide a supportive business environment while also helping working families afford and access child care. Thank you for your consideration, and I respectfully ask your aye vote.
Okay. Sir?
Yep. Chairman Hertzberg, Senators, my name is Matt Regan. I'm here representing the Bay Area Council. We are an employer-based public policy advocacy organization representing about 300 of the largest employers in the San Francisco Bay Area. SB 670 addresses two huge needs in California. We have a huge shortage of slots in quality child care programs. The budget cuts of recent years took a very large toll on child care, so much so that, as Senator Jackson pointed out, we can only accommodate 16% of children who need child care currently in licensed slots. We know that children who receive quality child care and preschool experiences have much lower grades, do much better in school. They have much lower instances of grade repetition, much lower needs for a very expensive remedial education, and much higher levels of high school graduation. They also do much better in life, higher lifetime earnings, and a whole slew of social benefits that come from quality early education. The bill also addresses a workforce problem. We have a huge shortage of women in senior positions within companies and employer institutions in California. We know that over 50% of our college graduates currently are women. We know that 50% of our workforce is women, but when you go into boardrooms and C-suites and upper management, it tends to be male-dominated. One of the major drivers of this phenomenon is, as Senator Jackson pointed out, women have to, in many instances, stall their career paths to take care of children, in large part because they do not have childcare alternatives available to them so that they can pursue both their careers and provide for the needs of their children. We are supporting the bill for these two reasons. It's both a workforce and a childcare priority for us, and we would urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any further in support? Opposition? Questions? Bill moved by Senator Pavley. Thank you for that close. Secretary, call the roll.
Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye.
Oh, is that a question?
I'm sorry, yes, I did.
Oh, my God. Senator Morlock. Please, I apologize. I'm so sorry. I
No,
didn't see.
that's fine. I just want to tell you where my burden is. You know, I read the comprehensive annual financial report of the state. It was a hobby of mine, and we have an unfunded, an unrestricted net deficit of $117 billion. So I'm concerned about that. So that's why I raised some of these questions, and I have difficulty with some of the tax credits. Just like you made the argument, we've got to pay for doctors for poor kids and all the rest, and I want to make sure it all fits. So I was just curious, Senator Jackson, if I could go through the
Please,
chair.
go ahead.
Has the LAO done any studies since this credit was stopped? Did anybody analyze the benefits and how it worked, and was it doing what it was supposed to be doing? I didn't see that in the.
Well, what we do know is we do know that there were a number of children who benefited from this. In the 5 years before the credit became non-refundable, on average, approximately 500,000 families claimed the credit for an average return of $146 million. However, in 2011, the first year became non-refundable, meaning that it was terminated because of the financial circumstances of the state. The number of filers dropped from 500,000 to 188,000, and there were only $34 million in credits that were returned. So we do know that it was, in fact, being used during the last 6 years of the credit. It was claimed on average by 5,000 companies and businesses, and it served over 10,000 children per year. So we do know that.
Okay, and so is there a way to measure the effectiveness that we're saying this is the direct benefit we're getting? Just
Well, I think that, you know, there are some of these things are difficult to measure. We do know that when children have access to quality early childhood education and care, that they are going to perform better in school, that they're less likely to drop out, they're less likely to need remedial assistance, more likely to do better in school, be more participatory in our democratic process. And therefore, there are benefits that you can't always calculate in the actual dollars and cents, other than that we know that early childhood education is a real benefit. We also know that in terms of the workforce, that when there's access to quality child care available, that women in particular tend to stay in the workforce. They tend to generate that income for their families that is then spent out in the economy. Beyond that, I'm not sure we have the specifics. We are working on whether or not that is something we could try to measure beyond the sort of accepted fact that these are the kinds of things that bring good workers to the workforce, keep them in the workforce, give our children a good opportunity for early childhood education, which benefits all of us through the education system and ultimately into the workforce.
And I'll look for a good academic study in between now and the next vote.
And if you find it, I'd like to see it as well.
I will
Thank
share
you.
it quickly. Yes, thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
thank you. The bill has been moved. Secretary, call the roll, please.
Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Nguyen. Bell. Bell, aye. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Laura. Laura, aye. Morlock. Morlock, aye. Pavley. You have 5-0 right now.
5-0. We'll hold that open. Thank you kindly, and thank you for your
Thank you,
patience.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you so much. I sent you flowers to your office.